Major funding for NJ Spotlight News is provided in part by NJM Insurance Group, serving the insurance needs of residents and businesses for more than 100 years. Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, and by the PSCG Foundation. From NJPBS Studios, this is NJ Spotlight News with Brianna Vannozzi.
Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Joanna Gagis in for Brianna Vannozzi. We're bringing you a special NJ Spotlight News edition of Reporters Roundtable with David Cruz. He'll have a roundup of the week's top political headlines and stories with a panel of journalists. First, though, a few of our top headlines. If the governor's race in New Jersey has felt civil so far, that's all changing. Democratic candidate Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill is calling for a federal investigation after learning that her entire military file, including private personal information, was released to Nicholas DeGregorio, a political ally of Republican candidate Jack Ciattarelli. Now, those military files included Sherrill's Social Security number, insurance information, and other private details. Sherrill says the request to access the files was unlawfully approved by an employee at the National Archives and Records Administration, and that after Ciattarelli's camp obtained the files, they leaked them to the press. She's accusing the Trump administration and Ciattarelli's campaign of weaponizing her personal information for political gain, and says if her records aren't safe, then no veterans' records are. Now, the National Archives and Records Administration did send a letter to Sherrill admitting their fault in the process. Meanwhile, the New Jersey GOP has accused Sherrill of being implicated in a cheating scandal while at the Naval Academy. They're calling on Sherrill to release her full disciplinary record from the Academy after learning that she wasn't allowed to walk in her graduation. Sherrill's graduating class had some 130 midshipmen tied up in a cheating scandal, which Sherrill says she wasn't a part of, but rather was barred from walking because she refused to name classmates involved. She has refused the GOP's request to release her records and says she, quote, graduated and was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Navy, serving for nearly 10 years with the highest level of distinction and honor. And the Newark Board of Education has failed to extend Superintendent Roger Leone's contract for an additional 2 years. Leone is contracted to lead the Newark Public Schools through the end of June 2028, and the extension would have guaranteed his job through June 2030. 5 votes were needed to confirm him. Leone only got 4. 2 board members abstained. 2 recused themselves because of family ties to Newark school employees, and 1 board member was absent. The board meeting did bring out hundreds of community members, though, who shared both praise and criticism of the superintendent. Some argued there's no need to extend his contract 3 years before it expires. Others praised Leone's role in building 13 new schools in Newark, including several new high schools, and some acknowledged his success in improving student attendance and test scores. But others were critical of Leone, citing still too low student achievement and what they called lavish spending on things like travel and meals. Leone's last contract renewal in 2023 faced significant scrutiny after it was approved with no public notice and no opportunity for public comment. Also, Amazon will pay $2.5 billion to settle a lawsuit with the Federal Trade Commission that accused the company of deceptively signing up tens of millions of customers into Prime memberships and then making it nearly impossible to cancel them. FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson said Amazon, quote, used sophisticated subscription traps designed to manipulate customers. The trial started earlier this week and was only a few days in before Amazon agreed to settle with the FTC. The company will now have to pay $1 billion in civil penalties and another $1.5 billion that'll go directly back to about 35 million consumers. Amazon is also required to improve their sign-up and cancellation options online. Now, Amazon has not admitted to wrongdoing, but rather said in a statement, quote, Amazon and our executives have always followed the law, and this settlement allows us to move forward and focus on innovating for customers. Those are your top headlines. Reporters Roundtable with David Cruz starts right now.
Well, so this is how the final month of the governor's race is going to go. Hey, everybody, it's Reporters Roundtable. I'm David Cruz. Our panel this week includes Aaliyah Schneider, covering the governor's race for the Philadelphia Inquirer, P. Kenneth Burns, the State House reporter for WHYY, and Brent Johnson, who covers the governor for NJ Advanced Media and edits the What Makes Jersey Run newsletter. Panel, welcome. Good to see you all. So the first really nasty potential scandal of the race, the National Archive releasing Democrat Mikey Sherrill's military record. The records show, in addition to her Social Security number and her home address, that she didn't walk with her class at the academy because she evidently didn't rat on classmates involved in this major cheating scandal. Brent, what is happening here?
I just literally wrote something this morning about how this was the craziest, nastiest day in Jersey politics, maybe since the Menendez situation. And the race has gotten increasingly heated in recent weeks. It has not been cordial. The debate wasn't crazy combative, but it still was tense. That was on last Sunday, and now it's getting more by the day. And so this was a pair of dueling things coming out. One that the National Archives mistakenly said it released her files, and then also then it came out that she didn't walk in her graduation. Republicans are saying, why didn't she do that? She should release her files. So this is a back and forth that's probably going to go on. And it's only 6 weeks left, but still a lot of time.
Aaliyah, Democrats want an investigation into how these records were released, and the Ciattarelli campaign now says they want Sherrill to release her disciplinary records. That's some pretty nifty footwork by the Republicans, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of this is that Mikey Sherrill has made so much of her campaign being about the fact that she's a Navy vet.
Yeah.
And she's even called on her schooling. And so, I think the two big contextual factors at play here is how central she's made her service to her campaign. And then also what we know about the president's threats to go after his political enemies. We don't know that's what happened here, but it definitely isn't a great look when the president endorsed Jack Ciattarelli, and this is kind of a tense topic in politics right now. I think another component is that Mikey Sherrill has talked about how important transparency is to her, and she previously released her tax returns, called on Jack Ciattarelli to do the same. And so now, even though there's Democrats calling for a probe into why her personal records got released, it also shines a light on something that maybe she's not being transparent about. And Jack Ciattarelli raising the question of, well, if your Navy service was so important and your schooling there, why aren't you releasing your records yourself?
Ken, she's kind of in between a rock and a hard place here, no? I mean, the Republicans assume that because they requested it, that she's going to refuse to do it, and then that works for them because then everybody's going to say, well, why won't she release them?
It's definitely a topic changer, and honestly, I wish I could come on this air and say, this has never happened in politics before. I remember in 2009, I believe, I was working for a small station in Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland, ironically, and the Democratic mayoral candidate had to drop out because her credit report was leaked to the public. And then I was just reading before we started, about 30 years ago last year, there was a state house candidate in Colorado. He was trying to track down who released his credit report. So I wish I could say this is something new. Maybe it's new for New Jersey. I haven't been in the state long, but it's just more. We're basically. Actually, here's a better way to say it. Remember where we were last week? Look up.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, what impact do you think this kind of thing could have on a race, Ken?
I know what it could have on a mayoral race in a small Maryland city.
Yeah.
On a statewide campaign, it's hard to tell. I mean, keep in mind, this came out after the latest Emerson poll shows the race at a statistical dead heat, which doesn't surprise me. We'll probably get into that today, but I don't think it'll have much impact because we've seen this on a national level to a certain extent and in other states.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the debate, which was the big story of the week before this. We just lived through a 5-hour block of pregame and postgame analysis there, a live audience. What did we learn from the candidates' answers, if anything, Aaliyah?
Well, I think there were a couple topics where they definitely shifted their tones from the primaries. For Mikey Sherrill, that was immigration, the Immigrant Trust Directive, which some call the state sanctuary policy. During the primary, when progressives in the race were calling for her to support the Immigrant Trust Act, which takes protections, or it further limits New Jersey's cooperation with ICE,
right.
which is already limited through the directive. Mikey Sherrill said during the primary that she had concerns about the act, but she supports what's in place under the directive. But when she was asked about that at the debate, she just didn't answer the question. She said she believes in the Constitution. She did say she was against ICE agents being masked, but she didn't answer it during the debate or when reporters pressed her afterwards. Meanwhile, Jack Ciattarelli, I found that he moderated his tone, at least, on vaccines from when I've heard him speaking in more Republican spaces, where, he has said that he is against what he calls a one-size-fits-all vaccine schedule, that he would never mandate a vaccine. He's talked a lot to so-called like parents' rights and medical freedom groups. But then when vaccines came up and herd immunity came up in the debate, he said, I support the vaccine schedule for, it was measles, mumps, and a few other diseases. Right. And he was speaking about the importance of them. And he didn't mention the exemptions. And, I think that doesn't necessarily mean he changed his view. He could have just been careful with his words. But he definitely gave off a different impression than other times he's spoken about this. But then after that, actually yesterday, he was a distinguished guest at a gala hosted by a group that is very much known for being anti-vaccine and against mandates for school children. And he was being promoted alongside these figures who are known for anti-vaccine advocacy, including one who spread conspiracy theories claiming that the COVID vaccine was making people magnetic, which we know is not true.
Well, listen, I'm magnetic, but I've never, I don't think the COVID vaccine did it for me. Kenny, what did jump out at you from this?
I think the number one thing that jumped out at me is that I was clearly watching a different debate from Bill Spadia.
I don't know who Bill Spadia is, but go on.
No, two things. One, Mikey Sherrill did not answer a lot of questions, and there wasn't enough specifics for me. And Jack Ciattarelli, he did speak specifically. A lot of the stuff he mentioned in the questionnaire that we sent him for our profile of him. And he definitely didn't have a scowl, but I think he did moderate his tone. But at the same time, going forward, I think he has to reconcile the tone and what's actually on his website based on his answers from this past week.
Brent, was there a clear winner?
It's funny that both sides now in any debate declare victory immediately.
Right.
But the insiders I spoke to on both sides basically said the consensus here was that no one really came out incredibly on top and no one really majorly hurt themselves. That kind of was a draw, and that people tuning in probably have made up their mind anyway. I know one issue was taxes. She keeps saying that Ciattarelli is proposing or discussing raising the sales tax to 10% while getting rid of the income tax. But she was then asked, well, would you take it off the table? And she declined to answer, saying, it's too soon to say any of that. So maybe both have the sales tax on the table, although Ciattarelli is saying that's not on the table for him. He ruled it out. She did not.
Yeah, that was something that struck me as well. Let's go to the highlight of the evening, of course. 12-year-old Mark Muir and Jack Ciattarelli in what will heretofore be known as the DAP disaster.
I'm only 12, but I've already seen one of our U.S. senators go to prison. What's your vision for restoring public trust in government?
Ouch, babe. But here's Mark, though. Remember, this kid is 12, and he explained why he didn't offer the DAP.
Even if it was Mikey Sherrill giving me a fist bump, I wouldn't do it. If it was Jack, I wouldn't do it, just because I need to remain bipartisan.
Kenny, don't ask for DAP if you're not going to get DAP in return, right?
That was the most public non-DAP / non-handshake since Letterman in '86 when GE bought NBC.
That is a reference right there.
Yeah, deep cuts. Did he get hurt by that, Brent?
I mean, the Democrats tried to spin it, and I think Cheryl tweeted, oof. But, it didn't tell the whole story. You know, the kid clearly was trying not to muddy the political waters, and I gave him credit for that. It's also, I wrote about this week. It's a sobering reminder of where we are at this country. And coming from a 12-year-old kid who knows that the political climate is so tense and divided right now that he doesn't even want to get in trouble for fist bumping a candidate. So I don't know what that says about our political discourse, but I guess kids are growing up now with a much more awareness of what's going on in the world in a negative way.
So
hey, I think over on that. I think he's showing us more maturity than any adult on the planet. I mean, he's doing what every voter should do. It's like you have to work for my DAP. You have to work for my handshake.
Yeah. So now there's an Emerson poll out that was taken right after this debate. It shows a dead heat. That's the first poll that doesn't show Mikey Sherrill with the lead. Aaliyah, is that what it looks like to you out there?
Even with the polls that show Mikey Sherrill in the lead, I think it's still closer than Democrats would have liked. So I think it definitely could be more of a wake-up call for some people. But I also, I think was already viewing the race as pretty close. And I think we've seen in the past when people get too comfortable with whatever the poll's saying that they end up being surprised. And I think as journalists, especially, we want to be prepared for different situations. So I think a lot of us were already viewing this race as either could win. But I do think that this poll could very well be a wake-up call that is the case.
Yeah.
And it is one poll, but again, I think in conjunction with single-digit leads, I think it just shows we don't know what's going to happen in this race.
Brent, is there a momentum change underway here, if there was any momentum in any direction before this?
Yeah, this poll is interesting. I basically the consensus I got from those I talked to was, yes, it's a ball game. It's a very close race. Democrats don't seem to think it's this close, but it does show that Chettarelli is not one to be taken for granted, or that a lead over him is to be taken for granted, and his side feels really confident after this and feels the wind at their back. And there seems to be people think there's an enthusiasm gap, that there's more enthusiasm on Jack's side. The question is, the numbers are on her side, so which one wins out? Do people stay home? Do people show up? The turnout really matters here.
That's what we hear all the time about the campaign, the Sherrill campaign. Kenny, any sign that they're getting the message that the enthusiasm is a little low?
That remains to be seen. I know there isn't a whole lot of, at least from what we could tell right now, the numbers are with Mikey Sherrill, but Jack Chettarelli has that enthusiasm. I've been to his primary night. I've been to his office opening over in Woodbridge, and there's definitely people seemingly more excited about Jack Chettarelli. And then too, Jack, even 4 years ago, he was a hell of a campaigner. He turned out that vote in South Jersey. He talks about coming to Newark often. I would be curious about how voters in Newark have received him.
One last note on this debate. Kenny, I don't think you were physically there. Aaliyah and Brent, I know that you guys were there. Something about Jack Chettarelli putting Bergen Record columnist Charlie Style in the penalty box. Aaliyah, what do you know about this? Did you see that?
Yeah, Jack was taking questions from various reporters, and when Charlie was starting to ask a question, he said something along the lines of like, "No, like I don't know exact words. I don't remember, but it was something along like, no, I don't want to hear from you, or I'm not going to take a question from you." And I remember just being confused. I don't know. I'm sure there's context there that I don't know about. I mean, Charlie is a columnist, which is a little different than a straight news reporter. But as we all know, like he reports out his columns and we see him at Gaggles a lot. So I think as a reporter, it did make me think for a second, like, oh, is this going to be the case where if you really, bother a candidate that you're not going to be allowed to ask them questions anymore? And I think that's something that we've probably seen in different ways. And I don't want to say too much because I don't know the context, but it definitely was a little jarring in the moment.
Yeah. Brent, you ever get a cold shoulder like that so publicly?
Yeah, I'm sure I have. I can't think of it. I've been to way too many press conferences in my life. But yeah, I heard this is a tiff between Jack holds something against Charlie that goes back a while. So I know Charlie's a friend and a colleague, but yeah, I'm sure people don't like me either.
Yeah, I never liked Style from the beginning. I'll say that right now.
Yeah. He's a Yankees fan.
Listen, I've had shouting matches with mayors in the city council chambers and argued many a time with Governor Christie, but they always took my question. I mean, if you're going to be governor of New Jersey, you're going to have to deal with Charlie Style, no? I mean, Kenny, how do you just say, no, I'm not going to talk to you? I mean, I love what your sign says behind you. What can I say?
Seriously, what can I say? I don't want to get canceled. As someone who was actually banned from a mayoral press conference in Baltimore because, and keep in mind, I was a straight news reporter, they do it because they can, and damn the consequences, sadly. And I could tell you, also based on my experience, neither Democrat nor Republican could take the high ground when it comes to the First Amendment. And that's sad in all instances. Again, I was banned in Baltimore from a open news conference because the outgoing mayor just didn't want to take my questions, and then she tried to tar and feather me on the way out the door. Thankfully, a lot of people had my back in Baltimore saying, no, you're wrong. He's the nicest guy.
Yeah. We did some reporting this week on the Charlie Kirk story and how it may be resonating in New Jersey in the governor's race. Brent, is Charlie Kirk an issue in New Jersey?
Yeah, I wrote about this for the newsletter last week. Republicans are saying that, yes, could galvanize younger voters because he was very popular with younger voters. And in a race that's a base election, the base matters and every vote matters. Democrats are saying that, that's overblown. And it just as much the reaction from how Trump has responded to this whole thing and other Republicans could galvanize progressive and Democratic voters. So I don't know, but it definitely Charlie Kirk and the assassination and the aftermath, everything that's gone after Jimmy Kimmel and so on, has dominated the political discourse, at least in the political circles. I know Twitter's not the world, but if you go on X, you can see that's what dominated the discourse, and it was here too. So it's definitely coloring the race. I don't know if it's going to be a deciding factor.
Free speech, very much a part of the discussion now, not only here. You have the president targeting media personalities, as Brent just referenced. Aaliyah, are you concerned that people, the public, are just generally kind of saying, oh, well, the president's mad at him, so good for him, and don't realize how free speech erodes and the slippery slope that we can get into?
I don't think we can draw wide conclusions on that yet. I think there are people who support the president who who do see that and are uneasy because they care so much about free speech. I think the president does have supporters who are happy with that. I do think that, there's different partisan interpretations of what speech should fall under free speech, and I think that is a big concern.
All right, I'm gonna have to leave it there. Aaliyah, thank you. Kenny, Brent, thanks to all of you. That's Roundtable for this week. Good to see you all. We are on Blue Sky now. Follow us there at David Cruz NJ and scan the QR code on your screen to get more Roundtable. I'm David Cruz. For all the crew here at Gateway Center in downtown Newark, we thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
That's going to do it for us, but a reminder, you can download our podcast wherever you listen, and you can watch us anytime by subscribing to the NJ Spotlight News YouTube channel. Plus, you can follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky to stay up to date on all the state's big headlines. And with Election Day just around the corner, check out our voter guide to get you up to speed on the candidates and the races on the ballot this year. Head to the NJ Decides 2025 tab on our homepage. I'm Joanna Gagis for the entire team here at NJ Spotlight News. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
New Jersey Education Association, making public schools great for every child. RWJ Barnabas Health, let's be healthy together. And Orston, committed to delivering clean, reliable, American-made energy.